talking while I was muted. Welcome to tonight's webinar on building authentic relationships as ESP leaders. We are so excited to have all of you here. We know it's been a long, busy week, and we're also excited to have the Pamella Johnson, our 2023 NEA ESP of the Year, here to share her experiences with building relationships with you all. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to her so she can introduce herself and kick off tonight's session.
Good evening, educational support professionals, or ESPs as we are often called. My name is Pamella Johnson, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. And I am an academic and behavioral intervention specialist at Rochester High School in Rochester, Washington, which is a small rural town just outside of Seattle. I am also the 2023 NEA ESP of the Year and thrilled to have this opportunity to be with you all tonight. First of all, happy Educational Support Day to us and American Education Week. I hope all of you celebrated, better yet, were celebrated yesterday for your hard work and commitment to ensuring every student succeeds. And thanks to all of you who joined a Champion Education Support Professional Teletown Hall last night. It was an honor to be a part of this amazing event alongside President Becky Pringle and U.S. Senator Ed Markey from Massachusetts. Thank you. My journey begins with my family. My parents definitely believe that it takes a village to raise a child. I grew up in Oak Harbor, better yet, NAS, Whidbey Island, where my late daddy, Isaac, served in the Navy and loved this country as a proud African-American man. I am the oldest out of 8 siblings, 4 sisters and 3 brothers, 5 of whom chose career in education, including a proud educational support professional, and that's me, 2 district administrators, and 2 teachers. Not only did my late daddy instill in each of my brothers and sisters that education is the key to success, but my mother also continues this through her grand and great-grandchildren. My parents also instilled in me, my siblings, the value and importance of authentic relationships. A lot of people don't know this, but before stepping into education, I had a successful 25-year career in banking. But in December 2007, I suffered a stroke, and I started reevaluating my career. I had, since I was a little girl, always wanted to be a high school history teacher. So I went back and got my degree from University of Washington. I worked as a special educational support professional for several years until a previous building administrator asked me to apply for a new position as an intervention specialist at my current school in Rochester. In this position, I was able to revamp the in-school discipline policy and turn it into the PACE room, which stands for the Positive Alternative Classroom Environment. The response was well received, and I continue to go into classroom to support students and help them to be successful in school. This was and still is what I do because I love what I do. I'm sure you heard the term, it's all about relationships. Well, authentic and intentional relationship building is something that I truly believe has made a huge impact on my students, on my career in education, and on me as being a union advocate. I became more involved in our union when I attended a Washington Education Association ESP conference. The first person I met was Janie White. who is our current WEA Vice President and fellow ESP member. She asked me my name and we immediately clicked. I asked her how I could become involved in a union, and she told me about an upcoming Educators of Color conference. I couldn't thank Janie enough for what she has done for me, because that conference, not only was I able to see me and others that look like me at this conference, but I also learned about Washington Education Association as an organization, how collective bargaining works, the importance of all members having a seat at the table, and the importance of why union strives to ensure all voices are heard, especially those who are marginalized like myself. My authentic relationship with Janie and other WEA leaders made me feel valued, heard, supported, and lit the fire in me as a union advocate and activist, as well as an educator. So as ESPs, we have the power to affect change. And I know you guys can read some of the data on here, but I want to add a few other data points that I would like to share with you. As ESPs, we have the power to affect change by building meaningful connections with everyone in the school community, including other educators, students, parents, and families, and community members. As critical members of the education team, we meet the needs of the whole student to ensure that they are safe, healthy, and ready to learn every day. And then lastly, I would like to add is we have the power to strengthen public schools and communities nationwide. That's why we must use the power of relationships, our voices, to lift our stories and advocate for our students and our profession. So why relationships? As humans, relationships that we form with other people are vital to our mental and emotional well-being, and in fact, even for our own survival. Humans have an inherent desire to be close to other people, to connect and build relationships. Social connectedness influences our minds, body, behaviors, all which influence our health and life expectancy. And then research has shown that social connectedness can lead to longer life, better health, and improved well-being. So the types of relationships that we can talk about that will help influence why relationships are important is that with your partners or significant others, with our friends, our family, our colleagues, our students, yes, and administrators, community members, and more. All of these relationships will look different, but we have to seek to make those connections meaningful that would bring positive results. And lastly, building relationship is not instant. It takes time, and that time that we invested in that work must be intentional. So for our first activity, I would like for you to use the chat. I would like for you to answer this question. What is authentic, intentional relationship building? And I'll give you about a minute on that. So as you're putting it in the chat, just think about how you build your own authentic, intentional relationship, even in your personal life or your professional life or with your family. So and I see one response. which I agree with, is seeing who you are, people seeing who you really are. Being real, having a sincere interest in developing relationship, hopefully long term. Wow, there's some really, really great responses here. So as we move on, let's move to our next prompt. So I want you to think about an authentic relationship you have. What are some of the characteristics that make that relationship authentic? And then I'll share what I think will make some characteristics of an authentic relationship with you. So I'll give you about a minute. I see positive attitude and sincerity. Being honest and truthful while respecting others. I love that one. Always being my authentic self and build relationship organically. That's really good. And being honest, being genuine, being transparent, trust and love. Thank you everyone for sharing. So I would like to share some of my characteristics of building authentic relationship, and some of them have been posted in the chat, but I would like to just share the few that I've come up with. Trust, mutual trust, truth, respect, and we all know about respect, having an open communication. We need to be intentional and practice, and then being able to treat others as you wish to be treated. So with that being said, I have one more for you. Who do you think are our most valuable partners in this work that we do, and why? Just think about all the people that you work with and their positions and the jobs that they hold in those positions in the schools or in a public education setting. Oh, wow, some great responses in here. Administrators, I see community, I see families, I see other educators, I see other ESPs. Those are all spot on. So as we move to the next slide, these are some of our most valuable partners in this work. Teachers, our specialized instructional support professionals, which are our mental health counselors, our speech therapists, and then other ESPs. And other ESPs include the ones that are in our other family. That includes bus drivers, food service workers, our informational technology folks, office administrators, custodians, food services, all of our students, administrators, our school boards, and other unions, social activists, and other community groups that you're a participant with, and also your faith-based organization. But before we can even have authentic and intentional relationships, let's talk about how that affects you. I take it up on myself to make sure that I am who I am before I am involved in other, before I bring in other partners. I need to make sure my foundation is firm and solid so I can withstand any of the challenges that come my way. And so in order to do that, I need to be firm in my truth, myself, and my why I am doing what I do. Next slide. So when we're building relationships with other ESPs or other teachers or SISP, as we call them, we need to start advocating for the changes that start within us, but by reaching out to other colleagues in our schools and our work sites. So how do we do that? It's important that we are acknowledging those partners and making sure that we're bringing them into the conversations that we're having. And so as you can see here, these are some of the things that I have used in my journey as an educational support professional that has helped me. And I wanted to share this with you on why it's important that we are building those meaningful and authentic relationships. In the first bullet point, we're talking about engaging in meaningful, authentic conversation. It's important that we are doing one-on-one with each other. And that could be with other students, with other ESPs. And when we're doing that, we're being intentional about how we are valuing each other in our relationship. And then I start off with my why I am doing what I do. It's important that you are relating that to the other educators that you're having conversations with, so they can understand where you're coming from. Also, too, we all know we want the same outcome for our students, right? So we need more students and more folks to be able to promote the value of educational support professionals. This is how we make our educational team strong. And it's critical that we begin building those relationships with others so they can help us elevate to the level of respect that educational support professionals are desiring and wanting. And the last bullet point I would like to emphasize is we need to treat each other with respect. And that includes each other in our own classification, educational support professionals. So I make it a point to make sure that I thank the custodian on the daily for cleaning my room and just showing up to work. That's important. I also greet my administrative assistant in the office. Even though her and we work very closely together, I want to make sure that I'm always acknowledging who she is and building that relationship, because I want to set the example for other staff to see that we can work hand in hand together. I'm making sure that everyone is getting what they need. That's how you build a relationship. And as I stated in the slide before, it takes time, but once you get there, you'll be surprised how quickly we're able to move into a positive impact for not only our students, but other educators, our families, and our communities that we serve. So, next slide. So, how do we build relationships with our students? The prime example that I gave with building a relationship with our educators is one that we can do with our students. And one of the things I really want to emphasize here is that we need to get to know our students, and we need to let them know that we really care. And it's not something that we just check off the box and just do. We really need to horn in on their culture. And what I mean by culture is not who they are in a physical sense, but who they are when they bring themselves to the school. Because that's important, and we need to appreciate who they are for that. And then appreciate their background, their culture, their identity, what they're bringing into the space. We need to make them feel welcome and treat them with respect. And then lastly, I would like to emphasize that it's important that, and I know this is a hot button with some of our educators, that we are actually pronouncing our students' names correctly. I'm going to talk about a lived experience I've seen is that I was in a classroom and one of the teachers was having a difficult time saying this child's name, and then kind of gave up and gave a name for him and told him that you can use that name when you're in my room. That's not okay. That's not okay on any level. And that to me was a disrespect for the student, because that's not how you can build a relationship. And unfortunately, that teacher had a struggle in the classroom because of him putting that on the student to make him fit his needs. So we need to hold each other accountable when it comes to learning about our students. And then we also need to hold our students accountable as well. So when kids are have a challenging moment and we need to correct them, we need to tell them why we're correcting them, but also hold them accountable so they're not making that same mistake again. And oftentimes they're going to make mistakes regardless, but that's how you build relationships. And they can come to you and say, Miss J, I'm having this difficult time staying on course. I need for you to help me stay accountable. And so that's our role as educational support professional or anybody in the education sense, to be able to make sure that we're holding our students accountable. And I just want to read one comment that Sylvia put in the chat, because this does matter. We need to listen to our students, and because you'll be surprised, and this is the truth, that sometimes all they want is for us to get to know them a little bit and why they are here. It's just not about learning, but show them what matters to them. That's true. A lot of times kids come to school with a lot of social and emotional challenges. And I've always had this saying in my office, it's like 90% of what we do is based on social and emotional, and 10% is based on the actual job. And I always tell my kids, if you're not ready, if you're not there mentally or socially, then you can't do the work. And so I always want to give them the tools, be able to tell them that, hey, I'm helping you, and you can help me. Let's make sure that you get what you need. So thank you. And here are a couple, we did there was a palette that we had done, and there was a couple responses that Ivis put in, and Andy, and I would like for you guys to take a minute to read what they have said, because these two positions, they're not your, I shouldn't say standard, but they're not your paraeducators that are in the classroom. This is a bus driver building a relationship with her students on the bus. And this is an assistant facility manager who does maintenance around the school. They're taking part as well as building relationships. So it doesn't matter if you're just a para educator or office manager or whatever. We all have a part in making sure that we're building authentic relationships with our students. And then lastly, how do we build relationships with our families and communities? This is very important because we have to have all three in order for us to make an effective relationship work in our school community. So for example, yesterday I was on a call with our NEA president, Becky Pringle, and she brought up that the priorities for us is that we need to promote, protect, and strengthen public education so that we as educational support professionals are critical into making this happen. So every issue that the NEA is advocating for directly connects to ESPs and the community. And I'm going to say that again. Every issue that NEA is advocating for directly connects to all educational support professionals in all categories in our family and the community. For example, let's talk about educator shortage, racial, social justice, privatization, fair wages. These are all community issues, all of them. ESPs are not just educators. We aren't just members of our union. We are community members, such as coaches, our neighbors, our parents, our volunteers, our parishioners, our worshipers, and our taxpayers. We are all in this together. And we have to be reminded that public schools are the foundation of our community and a fundamental principle of our democracy. Our power and impact as ESPs extends beyond school grounds and into the community we live and work in. So we must partner with families and communities for the common good. So I'm going to share an example. I remember years ago, before my dad passed away, I had bought my first property in Seattle. And the one thing he always told us, all of us siblings, is that you have to invest in your community. When it comes to things that matter to your students in the community, your investment in the bonds and levy are important. Because if you don't invest in your schools and the bonds and levies that are applied to that, people leave to go where they need to get what they need. My dad said this: if you ever own property in a neighborhood that always supports public schools, invest in the future of your community. Schools are important and bring value to the community. What are you investing in? Public education is something everyone is entitled and need to invest in for your community to thrive. And I strongly believe that. And that's the staple of everything that I do. I'm heavily involved in my community. And it saddens me when I hear people want to not invest in the community because of something that they want for themselves. And we have to look at the future of our public education. And then lastly, I would like to say this: our students live here. The politicians who make decisions that impact our jobs and community live and make decisions. The places where our family attend our schools, worship, and build relationships are in our community. That's why it's important that our local tax dollars fund our schools. Next slide. So we have the empowerment, engagement, and relationships. So how do we build those relationships with our families in our community? Well, one of the ways I've done is I got to get to know my families and my community partners by finding the partners who care about public education and democracy. That's important. I ran for school board 2 years ago. I was unsuccessful, but guess what? There was many opportunities that came out of that I was able to open the doors for other folks to come in and see what I do. And now I'm on various committees and task force in my community. And so that's important that they see educators in those settings to get the input from them as well. We also need to share our voice in everything that we're doing, making sure we're all seated at the table, equal partnership. Oftentimes when we're having meetings, I have seen where it's just been just teachers. And I always look around the room and ask myself, well, where are the educational support professionals? Because we're part of this community as well. And we're part of building relationships as well. And so oftentimes they forget about us. And I don't think it's intentional, but I think they often have to be reminded that educational support professionals are also a value to the community. And that's how we are empowered in our relationship through the engagement that we have with the community. And then other ways that we can be supportive is that we need to start attending meetings. And one of the meetings that I would like to encourage some of you, if you have not attended, is go to school board meetings. Just your presence being there makes a difference. You don't have to say anything. If they start seeing more educational support professionals in a school board meeting, they're going to start to wonder. And that's okay, because you are part of the community. You are a voter, and you voted for school board members to make sure you're being represented. And so that's why it's important that we are elevating ourselves in those spaces that often we are left out. And sometimes it takes us to just make sure we're intentional and moving forward on the train to make sure we're sitting in those spots. Next slide. And so I would like to end with parting words from my youngest granddaughter, who is now in the 4th grade. We went shopping for school clothes. I always take them shopping. That's Carly in the green and dress, and Savannah in the orange. And Savannah kept running off, doing her thing. And so Carly looked at me and she said, Grandma, she said, Savannah needs to stay engaged. She needs to be engaged in what we're doing. I said, oh, okay. So she said, so this is how it goes, Grandma. You got to be engaged to stay engaged, and you need to be about it. And I just kind of I just kind of perked up, and I'm like, oh my God. I said, I can't believe she said that. I said, but that's a powerful statement. So I just want to leave that with you, that we need to be engaged, to stay engaged, and be about who we are. And so this is my why. Believe that you can, and you're halfway there. And I picked that because I know Theodore Roosevelt said it. I picked that for this year for my why, because oftentimes I have to check myself to make sure that, am I doing the right thing? Am I being intentional? But I do believe what I'm doing. And so I know I'm halfway there. And so I just wanted to share these things with you, and I hope they're helpful. And I am really honored to be representing the National Education Association Educational Support Professionals for this year. I've traveled quite a few places, and I know that we are struggling to get the respect that we need, and that we are looking forward to making sure that we get the professional and living wages that we are entitled to because of all the hard work we do. I want to also emphasize too that what we do is not just a job, it's a profession that we are totally vested in. I could have easily been a teacher, but I chose to be an educational support professional because this is what I wanted invested in, because I looked at it as a profession. And so I wanted to uplift all of us that are on this webinar, and let you know I'm out there speaking on behalf for you. And these are some of the things that have worked for me, and I wanted to share that with you. So thank you so very much for taking your time to listen to me tonight, and I'm here for any questions at this time.
Thank you so much, Pam, for that awesome presentation this evening. At this time, we are going to open the floor for Q&A, and we are going to address the questions in the order in which they've been received until we run out of time. So we have quite a few questions that have been placed into the Q&A feature. As a reminder, only questions that are in the Q&A feature will be able to be included in this portion. So if you put a question in the chat, please type it in the Q&A feature because the chat was busy tonight. All right, and so to get us started with the Q&A portion, to facilitate that, I'm going to pass it back over to my colleague, Jenny Young.
Thank you, Jessica, and thank you, Pam. Our first question, you want to go ahead and take a sip of water before we get into Q&A?
I'm good.
Our first question is, how can you build relationships in school environments that don't recognize ESPs as part of the education team, or leave ESPs out of everything?
That's a great question. And so let me talk about my experience about that, because I was able to make a change in my school district. So when I started off at Rochester High School, I started off as a special education EA. And so I was working with my students and noticed that our PLC day, which is on Fridays, a half a day, that, the ESPs were going home and the teachers were having meetings. And so I caught wind of that the first 2 times. And then the third time that happened, I said, I'm not going home. And they said, what? And I said, listen, there's 6 of us special education support professionals that work with students that are on IEPs. We need to be in on this conversation. And so what are we going to do to make sure that happens? And so they were kind of taken aback, like, and I'm going to be honest with you guys, I thought I was going to get in trouble for saying all that, because I was like, I might have overstepped my bounds. But the head of the Department of Special Education, she came to me and she said, you know what, Pam, all these years I've been here, I have never had one EA come and tell me that. You're the first one. And she goes, now we're going to make changes that you guys are always involved in our PLC. And I know sometimes it's hard for us to say things because we often get chastised for saying it, or, we're being told that you need to stay in your lane over here and not come over here. But if we're really truly trying to build authentic and intentional relationship, and we're uplifting student success at the same time, why are we not collaborating together and working together? This is part of what building a relationship is. And so I would I would encourage you to ask why you're not involved in those meetings, and then come up with reasons why you should be in those meetings. Everyone needs to have a seat at the table. And so if we're really intentional about building relationships with our families and our students in the community, this is one way we can do that, by making sure everyone has a seat at the table.
Thank you very much, Pam. All right, our next question. Relationships with teachers are really important to increasing support for ESPs. Do you have any tips for building stronger relationships with teachers or getting them to care about ESP issues?
I think one of the ways I've done is just, I just always put myself in those spaces. And I know it's hard to do at times, but if I found, like, for instance, I coach track as well. And so some of the, one of the teachers I had an issue with at the beginning, coach track. And so I found that he was in his element when he was coaching track. So he was a whole different individual. And I asked him one day, I said, the way you coach out here, you need to bring that same passion into the classroom so kids can see that. And he was like, oh, I never thought of that. I said, because that passion is what's gonna drive our students to be where we want them to be as citizens in this country. And so I'm not here to give you, it's hard work, but I do it intentionally because that's who I am. And I know sometimes it's hard to make sure that the teachers that some of the teachers that we work with don't understand what we do. And I think we have to make sure we go and have a conversation with them and say, look, I am an educational support professional. This is what I do. And I would like for you to understand what I do so they can have a picture of what we do. I think oftentimes educational support professionals often are not given an opportunity to share what we do because we're not given an opportunity to do that. And so I think we need to put it on ourselves to open the door and just say, hey, you have a few minutes? I would like to, have a conversation, let you know who I am and what I do and how I would love to collaborate with you on making sure that we're making sure our student success is at where it needs to be.
Thank you, Pam. All right, next question. How important do you feel it is to have representation from every career family on the local school boards?
100%. That's very, very, very important. I know one school district that has had made a tab in their school board meeting for educational support professionals to report to them. And when I heard that, I was like, you know what? I think Rochester should do that. I think it's important that someone is representing all the ESPs and you get information from all of the classifications that are fall under our ESP family and say, hey, what's going on in custodial? So I would like to report that to the school board so they know what's going on in informational technology, what's going on at all the office staff. So they know, and that keeps them in loop with what's happening in their own school district. And also too, it holds them accountable as well, because they're responsible too, making sure that the ESP needs are being met.
Thank you. The next question is, do you have any tips on dealing with colleagues who are difficult I find it hard to want to build a relationship with someone who isn't interested in building one with me.
Yeah, that's hard. And oftentimes I've seen this happen in my building. Sometimes you just have to take a step back and let that do what it needs to do, but also let them know that, you know what, I'm here for you in any situation that you need, and let them kind of like step back, but also show them in a caring and respectful way that no matter what, I'm here because I do care about you. Sometimes it's best not to just go all in. You have to kind of read the room and read how they are, and take it from there. It's hard. I'm not even gonna lie. It's hard to really build relationships with folks that are very difficult. But I've also found myself too that I still say good morning to them. I'll say hello to them. I'll still do all the basic things that I know, because maybe one day they'll turn around and actually come to you and say, you know what, I noticed you have not changed. You've always been this way, and go from there. I hope that answers your question. I just find that you have to be consistent in doing those things.
Thank you. Often we face issues like violence or hostility from students. How do we apply these strategies to building or repairing our relationship with them?
Can you repeat that again?
Yep. Often we face issues like violence or hostility from students. How do we apply these strategies to building or repairing our relationships with them?
Yeah. And I think we're seeing more and more of that now in our roles. It's challenging for me because I've had to deal with that the last 2 weeks. I had to take a step back on evaluating situations. And I want to make sure that I was doing things in a corrective manner by making sure my emotions didn't get in the way, but thinking about how the process needed to be addressed. So I think the first thing we need to do, and I had to do this for myself, I needed to take the emotion out of what I was feeling, and then review my relationship with the student. And better yet, do I have a relationship with the student? And then have those conversations with them. I'm always in check with the kids, even if they've done something that was not favorable. But I also make sure to tell them that, you know what, I'm not perfect either. And Miss Johnson, Miss J has always makes mistakes, but I also want them to also learn from the mistake on what they can do better in that the next time, because they're going to make mistakes. And I think I want to put this in the room. We have to remember these are still children. And I think oftentimes we expect them to be grown-ups in certain sense, and then children in other sense. And we're giving them mixed signals where we're telling them that they need to grow up. And I'm like, they're still children. And then so I just want to make sure that, first of all, we're recognizing they're still children, they're still growing, and they're still learning how to process, and they're asking us for guidance, even if it's not favorable for them. So I just wanted to put that out there in the room. And I hope I answered that question.
Thank you. We have a few more minutes and a couple more questions. So what is your biggest struggle that you overcame as an ESP?
My biggest struggle, and I'm pretty sure the ones that are still on this call can say this too, is that we're often tasked to do a lot of other jobs. And so we have to prioritize and make sure that things are being covered. And my biggest struggle is I'm very passionate about what I do. And I often think that some folks take that for granted. They think that I'm supposed to be there for everything. And when I finally tell them that my plate is full, they didn't expect an answer from me like, well, I can't do that right now. They just expected me to do that. And so I had to learn to really say no quick on certain things, but I also gave them a reason why, because I'm invested in this child right now at this point, or I'm invested in the community right here, and I need to be fully attentive to what I'm doing over here. It's hard when you're being pulled in all different angles, but I think the majority of us that are on this call, we know that this is why we do what we do, because we love what we do. And unfortunately, some folks don't respect what we do. And that's one of the challenges that we need to really be vocal and uplift as we address the livable and wages about our profession.
Thank you. Do you think ESPs are being noticed and valued more than in prior years? And if so, why?
I think they're being valued more now than ever, because when I started 12 years ago, there was not this like, oh yeah, you're an ESP. But before then they would say, oh, you're just an ESP. The key word is just. Now we're not saying that anymore. I think we got a lot of strong educational support professionals in all our family that are strong advocates, strong union advocates that are pushing the envelope. They understand that we are asking for respect on all levels. And so there's an aura about that. And I'm really excited about that because of the fact that now we are really being our own true advocates to advocate for professional living wages, racial, social, economic justice. And we have strong leaders such as our president, Becky Pringle, who is a staunch leader in making sure that that's going to happen. And we have a strong executive committee for the NEA, and we have a strong NEA board of directors that is truly behind us. And we have some folks in Congress that now are understanding the role of what we do. So let's keep doing what we're doing, be loud about what we do, and be strong and in this support, because it's going to happen. So thank you.
All right, we have time for one more question. What is the correct way to approach a coworker who you want to let them know that you don't like for them to hug you? You don't want to offend them, but how do you approach them to let them know that you might not be want their hug or a hug from anyone really? How do you approach them and handle that situation?
I think one of the things I've always asked people, because I'm a hugger, but I just don't go up and hug people. I'm like, do you mind if I hug you? And they say no, I don't get offended with that. I think it's best that we ask. And I think in this instance, I think it's best that you just let the person know. There's nothing, there's nothing, there's, I don't think there's anything wrong with, I think you need to ask people when you're doing that particular gesture. Because there are some people that don't want to be, they didn't want to hug, but that doesn't mean no reflection on them. And I hope that when this question was asked, that I'm still going to love you no matter what. My hugging, when I ask people for hugs, that's just my way of welcoming you into in my world. And that's just how I show affection and love. So I hope I answered the question.
Thank you. You sure did. All right.
And can I just read one comment that Sarah wrote? Because I think she summed it up for me. I think it's okay just to say, I'm not really a physical touch person. Then that lets them know you're not a hugger, rather than rejecting them specifically as a hugger myself. Yeah, I think that, yeah. But I think honestly, I think it's best you ask people too, because I think out of respect for them.
Thank you, Pamela. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
To request a general session-specific certificate of completion as a participant of recorded sessions, please send your request by emailing espqweb@nea.org. All requests must include the session title and the on-screen certificate of completion code. Session certificates will not be To request a general session-specific certificate of completion as a participant of recorded sessions, please send your request by emailing espqweb@nea.org. All requests must include the session title and the on-screen certificate of completion code. Session certificates will not be provided if your viewer code is not included in the email request. Note, due to limitations in our ability to track attendance after live sessions, requests for personalized certificates will only be provided for participants of live webinars whose attendance can be verified. The certificate received for viewing recorded sessions will be session specific, but will not include personalized names. On behalf of the Center for Professional Excellence in Student Learning's NEA ESP Quality Department, I would like to once again thank our presenter, Pamella Johnson, for the amazing information and the way she presented this evening, and thank our guests for joining us in this recording. Please stay safe, stay healthy, and good night from the NEA ESP Quality Department.